What a morning already. God is good. I'm glad to see Bill really is with us, even though he's down front on the far left and Gaylor's in the back far right. I will be available for marital counseling around 2:30 p.m. I don't know that I've ever heard it said nicer, Professor Lee, that there was illegal signage placed on our property. What a wonderful day. What a beautiful day. This morning we'll be learning from the book of Joshua, chapter 4. I'll give you a couple moments to turn there if you so desire to turn there, or to download, or to do what God has led you to do. I love the sound of turning pages. And I know there are probably some here wishing that they would not hear me or see me, as happened just a few moments ago. Never quite had that problem. That was meant to be a joke. And it went. Joshua chapter 4. When all the nation had finished passing over the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Take 12 men from the people, one from each tribe, and command them, saying, 'Take 12 stones from here out of the midst of the Jordan, from the very place where the priest's feet stood firmly, and bring them over with you, and lay them down in the place where you lodge tonight.' Then Joshua called the 12 men from the people of Israel, whom he had appointed, a man from each tribe, and Joshua said to them, 'Pass on before the ark of the Lord your God in the midst of the Jordan, and take up each of you a stone upon his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the people of Israel, that this may be a sign among you. When your children ask in time to come, what do those stones mean to you? Then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever.' And the people of Israel did just as Joshua commanded, and took up 12 stones out of the midst of the Jordan, according to the number of tribes of the people of Israel, just as the Lord told Joshua. And they carried them over with them to the place where they lodged, and they laid them down there. And Joshua set up the 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests bearing the ark of the covenant had stood, and they are there to this day. For the priests, hearing the ark, stood in the midst of the Jordan until everything was finished that the Lord commanded Joshua to tell his people, according to all that Moses had commanded Joshua. The people passed over in haste. And when all the people had finished passing over, the ark of the Lord and the priests passed over before the people. Dropping down to 14. On that day, the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all of Israel, and they stood in awe of him, just as they had stood in awe of Moses all the days of his life. And the Lord said to Joshua, 'Command the priests bearing the ark of the testimony to come up out of the Jordan.' So Joshua commanded the priests coming up out of the Jordan. And when the priests bearing the ark of the covenant of the Lord came up from the midst of the Jordan, the soles of the priests' feet were lifted up on dry ground. The waters of the Jordan returned to their place and overflowed all its banks, just as before. The people came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and they encamped at Gilgal on the east border of Jericho. And those 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua set up at Gilgal. And he said to the people of Israel, when your children ask their fathers in times to come, what do these stones mean? Then you shall let your children know. Israel passed over this Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan for you until you passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up for us until we passed over, so that all the people of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, that you may fear the Lord your God forever. This was one of the most climactic moments in the history of Christian and Jewish people. Very few events had as much significance as this one. Think about it. 40 years wandering in the desert. They knew they were called to a home, a place that was special, a place where all of their dreams would come true. A land flowing with milk and honey. They anticipated it. These people were raised with that promise. A promise not just of Moses, but from God himself. And it was about to become reality. Only that river stood in the way. An overflowing, swift-currented river. But God took care of all that. And I'm sure as they were passing through that dry riverbed, those young people remembered the stories of how their mothers and their fathers had crossed the Red Sea before them, not knowing exactly what was out there, just knowing God had called them out. And here they were, about to fulfill that promise. They were entering the promised land. I want you to think back for a moment. Remember when you bought your first house? You remember that moment that you pulled out the keys from your pocket and you went to the door and you unlocked the door and you went over that threshold and it was all yours. The excitement, the dreams, the thought of the pitter-patter of little feet one day. They were experiencing that same thing. Here it is, right there in front of them. A moment that probably seemed almost too good to be true. But it wasn't. They were there. Now, being the guy I am, I know that if I would have crossed over, I would have probably said something like, would someone pinch me? I can't believe this is happening. And knowing my family the way I do, one of my sons would have gladly given me a real good pinch. But that just kind of adds to the surrealness. It was happening. But what was really happening? What had really just transpired? You see, it wasn't their own effort. It wasn't that they were smart enough to dam up the river. It wasn't that they were brave enough to launch out over. They were doing what God had asked them to do. Well, let me back up. God didn't ask them to do it. God told them to do it. Remember that first house? Remember turning that lock? Did you ever have to put a roof on that house? Did you ever have to fix the furnace? Or the windows? Or that creaky step? Somehow, with time, sometimes our dreams and our excitement dissipates. You have to cut the grass. You have to vacuum the carpeting. You have to mop the floors. And somehow that excitement of this is all mine turns into this is all mine. I can't push this off on anybody. I need to do this work. You see, God realized at some point the excitement and the energy might wane. But he also wanted to grab that moment of high excitement and anticipation and memorialize it. So he commanded Joshua to command his people, while you're going through that riverbed, I want you to grab out a rock, a stone, and I want you to carry it on your shoulder and march on out. Now, you know Joshua had to pick some pretty big guys. And amazingly enough, these guys listened to Joshua. They each, one man from each tribe, scooped up a stone and carried it on his shoulder to where they would camp for the evening. And there, they arranged them. Actually, the word is stacked them. And Joshua had them stack the rocks for one reason, one particular reason. Rocks don't naturally stack themselves. Now, if you don't believe me, I highly encourage you to go home today, pick up about a dozen rocks, lay them in your driveway if they're big. If they're smaller, go ahead, take them right on into the living room. Lay them down there and see if they'll stack themselves. You can cheer them on, do whatever you want to do, because, I know there's nothing else going on at 1 o'clock for the folks here in Richmond. Sorry, that was a dig, and I looked at Jamie when I did it. They don't stack themselves, so something would have to happen. A human would have to walk over and very methodically put one on top of the other, making sure that they stood. And they did this because future generations would be able to come to the realization that these structures don't just naturally occur. So why is this here? What does this mean? And it was supposed to be an opportunity for the children of Israel to share with their children what an awesome and mighty God they served. You see, it really had nothing to do with Joshua. You notice the reading of that text, all of Joshua chapter 4, it never says, and remember the leader that brought you in. It's absent. It wasn't a memorial to the work that Moses had done to prepare them to cross over. It was to commemorate the greatness and the might of God. Today, we are taking part in a celebration of a historical marker on Midlothian Turnpike. And you know what's real interesting to me? While it might have the name Pastor Watkins, it may have the name Missionary Nanny David Bland, it is a tribute to what God did in this little area of the world. God gave a man a vision to start something spectacular. Not just one church, but 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. It brought a young woman with a passion to reach the nations. When it's so easy to just take a look around us and get comfortable and say something like, well, why should I worry about them? You see, God did something spectacular. That marker is to remind us that God is still active. God didn't stop. God is still calling men and women to proclaim Him wherever they are and wherever they're going. But I hear it. Yeah, but Pastor, times are tough today. Times are rough. I can't freely share my religious opinions at work. Joshua never had that problem. Times are different. Things have changed. Folks, if we live lives as committed as these first individuals crossing into the promised land were, God will lead, guide, and direct us. If we live a life worthy of being called Christian, folks will notice. Is life easy today? No, it's not. It is complicated. We may have more distractions and problems than anyone has ever had in the history of mankind. Some terribly great, some not so horrific. My fear is too often we take the easy way. You know what I mean? The path of least resistance. They're having problems over there. So I'll just stay away from there. Frank really doesn't like me. I don't know why Frank doesn't like me, but I don't think he likes me. So I just won't talk to Frank. And I'll be happy, and Frank will be happy, and there'll be no problems. Pastor, I completely believe in world missions, but you know what? my bank account isn't as healthy as, insert your favorite millionaire here. You know, he could really do something about the problem. See, it's just easier. Joshua and Israel could have done it the easy way. They could have said, God, yeah, we know you have called us to just beyond this river, but you know what? The river's fast, and the river's high, and the river's deep, and we'll just take it easy here. Because you know, God, we know you want us to be happy, and we know you want us to be comfortable, and we know that you want us to be secure, and it's just so much easier on this side. Why rock the boat? We can accomplish just as much here as we could there, right? And had that happened, they would have been living a lifestyle of disobedience. Because God never said, come close to making a difference. God never said, get as close as you can without actually committing. God doesn't say, walk as close to Jesus as you can without trusting Him. No, God always calls us to a step further. And He calls us to a step further because it's not of ourselves, but He reveals His power in those moments through us. God was trying to demonstrate, and He was trying to get the children of Israel to set up this memorial so that they would realize He was in command. It was His. All of it was His. And if it was His, He'd care for it. And if you're His, He cares for you. No matter how dark, no matter how difficult the moment seems. It's also extremely important to see the end picture, the real big picture. See, this wasn't just about Israel. Yeah, God initially packaged it that way. It was about promoting and making the Israelites come into the promised land so that they could have all they needed and all they wanted, but it wasn't just for them. And we know this by the last verse there in Joshua chapter 4. Actually, I'm going to back up to 23 just so you get it in full context. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan for you until you passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which He dried up for us until we passed over. Now, why did He do it? So that all peoples of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, and that you may fear the Lord your God forever. You ready for this? God dried up the river Jordan for missiological reasons. It was about His people being on mission with Him. So, Pastor, are you trying to tell me missions is seen in the Old Testament? Yes! Again and again. It is about reaching out, going beyond our comfort zone, overcoming obstacles and boundaries, and making God's name known. The memorial of those 12 stones that day wasn't about the Israelites. And that large stone down on Midlothian Turnpike at 9600 is not about us. It is pointing to something bigger, something so much stronger, someone so much more impressive. We, as human beings, exist to know God first. And secondly, we exist to make Him known. How can we do that? How can we possibly make God known in our community today? My goodness, there's a 3-foot, 250-pound iron sign hanging at the road saying something special happened here at some point. What means that sign? That God impacted men and women ages ago, and He's still impacting them today. Sometimes it makes us feel small. Why? There is so much history of God around us, and we play such a short. If the history of God was in a book, well, I guess it kind of is, isn't it? If the history of God is in a book, and it tells of all of His tales and all that He has accomplished for mankind and all that He has done for human beings, our story is intertwined in that book. Now, in fairness, we're probably just a paragraph. But each one of us is a paragraph. And in that paragraph, it offers hope and encouragement, forgiveness, and salvation. Your life was meant to be a memorial. Your very presence was meant to be a standing sign pointing to God. But how is that? How is that? I'm just a middle-aged man, grew up in a nowhere town, went to really a nowhere tiny little state school, and then just did what I thought I was supposed to do, go from one school to another school. Yeah, then I went and played a little bit overseas for a while, and then come back, did another school, and then moved to the big city. What's so fantastic about that? The God that worked behind it is what's so fantastic about that. You see, when the Israelites crossed over the Jordan, everything changed. They could have remained their old selves, a whole big group of wandering nomads, really, walking around the desert. They had all that they really needed. They were getting manna. They were getting quail. They got water when they needed it, even out of rock. They could have remained where they were and been content. But God wanted more for us. Because really, that's who Israel crossed the Jordan for. It was us. Because if they stayed over there, we would have never heard the rest of the stories. They wouldn't have lived a life of faith and obedience. They would have just been one of those civilizations that came and went. While we celebrate the sign down on the road, we do it not for those who have passed on to glory. We don't celebrate it even for ourselves. We celebrate it for those who would follow us. Because of their faithfulness and our call to faithfulness, there should be generations here for years. Good Lord willing, people that we will never know this side of eternity. But can you imagine that fourth pew back where, man, Robbie, you blew the statistical age limit. That fourth row back where, minus Robbie Wiki, comes to what? The eldest of the group's 15? Can you imagine their great-grandchildren meeting here and praising God? Most of us probably won't meet those great-grandchildren. But because of our faithfulness, or lack thereof, will impact those lives. Missionary Bland said, "Never give up Africa." And for as long as I can almost count and remember, I can go back and see all of those wonderful certificates that Bethlehem Baptist Church received for giving to the Lottie Moon Christmas offering as the highest giving church in Middle District. Maybe it's all this, I don't remember right now. But we remember Africa. Let me say it in a very biblical-like way. You have heard it said, never give up Africa. But I tell you today, don't give up Chesterfield also. What we do from here out impacts eternity for so many. What do these stones mean? They mean life. A very personal, eternal life with Jesus Christ. They mean forgiveness. That no man and no God holds anything against us. They mean security. For we reside in one's hands, a great God, whom nothing or no one could pluck us out of. It means faithfulness. For those who have been given much, much is expected. There is so much talent and ability and skills in this room. It's overwhelming. Brothers and sisters, what are we going to do with it? Are we content to stay on this side of the river? Because, you know, the river is wide and it's hard to cross. Does it really matter? What's the big deal anyway? with all of the problems we have in our world, what does it really matter? One time in your life, someone had that question in their head. What does it really matter if I share Jesus Christ with this person? Perhaps it was your mama, or your daddy, or your friend down the street, or just some preacher. Because you know what? Preachers can even do it too sometimes. Can you imagine if the person who took their time to share Jesus Christ with you personally and asked you, do you desire to follow him today, would have said, what's it really matter if I talk to him? What's it really matter if I talk to her? In the big shape of things in the year 2016, it probably wouldn't have made a big impact in the world, but it sure did in your life. Let us be faithful. So when these youngins come up to us and says, why that plaque? Why that sign? We are quick to answer because we serve a holy, righteous, forgiving, saving God. And let me share just a little bit about him with you. As our musicians come, we're going to give you the opportunity. If you have never had that conversation with someone, if you just don't get what all of this means, we're going to ask you to step on out, come on down, and let's have that conversation. Or perhaps you are tired of status quo. You're tired of living life the easy way. And you are ready to cross over that river. Boundaries, be gone. We'll ask the same thing. That's kind of a rededication of your commitment to Christ in Bethlehem. We'll open that up. And if you desire to make that difference today, we're going to ask you to come. As they sing, let us glorify our God, however he asks.
Please stand. Have thine own way, Lord. Have